to recent remarks by the White House. Meanwhile, President Lee Jae-myung praises the country's patriots for their selfless service during a luncheon on this Friday at Cheong Wa Dae. And for those of you who have yet to make weekend plans, binge watching may be an option as Squid Game Season 3 has just hit the screen. The Trump administration's July deadline for country-specific tariffs may be extended, but its auto-related tariffs are set to be expanded. Lee Seung-jae has our top story.
Washington could extend its pause on reciprocal tariffs, which is set to expire next month. According to White House spokesperson Caroline Leavitt on Thursday, the pause could be extended, but added that it's a decision for the president to make. The comments come as the temporary suspension of reciprocal tariffs, including 25% duties on South Korea, is set to expire on July 8th. In April, U.S. President Donald Trump announced the reciprocal tariffs to match those of other countries on U.S. goods. While the tariffs took effect on April 9th, Trump pressed the brakes on his plans for 90 days to allow for negotiations. Earlier this month, the U.S. president expressed his openness to extend the pause, but said that an extension might not be necessary. Meanwhile, Washington has begun a process to include more auto parts imported into the U.S. on the list of those subject to 25% tariffs. The U.S. Commerce Department's International Trade Administration on Thursday released its outlined process, where U.S. domestic producers may request additional auto parts to be included in the new tariff scheme. To receive the request from the domestic producers, the ITA is forming 2-week submission windows 4 times a year, with the first window opening on July 1st. Following the 2-week window, a non-confidential version of each valid request will be published, with the ITA making the final decision within 60 days of receiving the request. The move is expected to affect South Korea's auto parts industry. Earlier this year, Trump invoked Section 232 of the Trade Expansion Act, which grants the president the power to adjust imports into the U.S. when determined they threaten to impair national security. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
So, what does a potential U.S. extension in country-specific tariffs mean for South Korea? Our correspondent Kim Do-yeon asked a few pundits for their thoughts. Do take a listen.
The White House's comment on the tariff negotiation deadline comes after other recent signs that the possibility of a deadline delay was looming. White House economic advisor Stephen Myron had also said on Thursday local time that he thinks the tariff deadlines will likely be extended for countries that are making a genuine effort to negotiate trade deals with the U.S. He said that in such cases, he doesn't expect tariff rates to suddenly increase. Experts say this shows that things aren't going the way the U.S. expected when it comes to tariff negotiations.
Trump is in a tough spot. Things aren't going his way, especially on trade. Negotiations aren't producing the results he wanted, with tax policy issues in his hands as well. In terms of trade, nothing is working as he thought.
So far, the UK is the only country to have concluded its trade talks. South Korea, meanwhile, dispatched Trade Minister Yo Hang-gu to Washington this week for high-level discussions, but no breakthrough has been announced. Observers say the delays could actually work in favor of the negotiating countries.
As the U.S. midterm elections approach, November next year, Washington's leverage weakens. That makes it more desperate to produce a deal it can sell to voters as a win, meaning it's giving off signals that it needs the deal more than the others do.
Analysts also argue that if the U.S. were confident about its position, it would have gone ahead with the reciprocal tariffs already announced earlier this year, rather than signaling a possible extension.
Trump has 2 options. Stick to the July 9 deadline and enforce reciprocal tariffs, or postpone them. But if the U.S. slaps on tariffs, prices on imported goods rise, and that could hurt American consumers. So instead, it's backing off.
Still, the White House isn't ruling anything out. The spokesperson also said President Trump could still opt for reciprocal tariffs if he believes they serve U.S. interests and benefit American workers. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
The recent consensus by members of NATO to raise their defense spending by 5% of their respective GDP over the next decade is looking to have tangible implications on U.S. allies here in this part of the world, including South Korea. Our senior correspondent Oh Soo-young explains.
US President Donald Trump seems set to call on Asian allies to increase their defense budgets after European countries bow to his demand to hike their spending targets to 5% of gross domestic product. In a briefing on Thursday, White House spokesperson Karoline Leavitt said if America's European allies in NATO can do it, then, quote, allies and friends in the Indo-Pacific region can do it too. Leavitt added that specific matters would be addressed by President Trump. The previous day, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, during its annual summit in the Netherlands, adopted a joint statement with all 32 member countries agreeing to raise their respective defense expenditures to a total of 5% of GDP by 2035. Representing South Korea, National Security Advisor Wi Sung-rak attended the summit, after which he told the Korean media that NATO's defense increase reflects a broader trend and that similar demands are being made of Seoul. We said such demands are being discussed by working-level officials, but clarified they haven't yet established how the agenda would proceed. South Korea will have to decide how to respond, he said. US officials have recently been pushing for alliance modernization, which entails its security partners spending more on their defense, paying for the deployment of US strategic assets, and reassessing the role of American forces stationed abroad. US Acting Ambassador to Seoul Joseph Yoon said on Wednesday that the two allies should address new areas concerning costs that are not covered in their bilateral defense cost-sharing agreement reached last year. Seoul appears to be maintaining caution amid sensitive discussions. The Foreign Ministry on Thursday released an official statement saying it will continue working closely with Washington to develop the alliance into a future-oriented, comprehensive strategic alliance that can respond to a changing security dynamic. A senior official told reporters that the two governments are engaging frequently at various levels. However, when asked whether the talks include defense spending or the cost of deploying strategic assets, the official said it is, quote, difficult to share and declined to comment on what a future-oriented alliance entails. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
In other news, Defense Minister nominee An Gyu-baek will consider restoring the suspended September 19th military agreement between the two Koreas. Addressing members of the media earlier on this Friday ahead of his confirmation hearing, An said South Korea should first seek civil-level exchanges with North Korea and then advance to restoring the military accord to ensure peace on the Korean peninsula. When asked about his potential approach to the Trump administration, An spoke of adopting a proactive, positive posture based on national interests. Meanwhile, Vice Defense Minister Lee Do-hee, during his inauguration ceremony also on this Friday, reaffirmed the importance of a practical approach. He said the military here must seek practical cooperation to boost deterrence based on the ROK-US alliance and to defend national interests. China has reportedly accepted thousands of North Korean workers this year. This is according to a report by Japan's Yomiuri Shimbun on this Friday. The report claims about 3,000 workers arrived in Jilin by the end of March and 500 more workers in Liaoning by May. Most of them are said to be young women working in clothing and seafood factories. The Japanese report links this latest development to China's search for affordable labor amid its economic challenges and its efforts to boost ties with North Korea. Meanwhile, the UN's 2017 sanctions ban North Korean labor in member states to thwart funding for the regime's nuclear and missile programs. The Unification Ministry here has urged Pyongyang to inform Seoul in advance of any intention to discharge water from a dam across the border. Making note of past agreements between the two Koreas to fight flash flooding during the monsoon season, the ministry emphasized that early notification would serve to prevent accidents arising from sudden surges in water levels of the Imjingang River that flows from the north to the south. Back in 2009, an unannounced release of water from North Korea's Hwanggang Dam near the border resulted in the loss of 6 South Korean lives. At the Parliament on this Friday, plenary session took place to fill the leadership posts of standing committees, including those of the Budget and Judiciary, which both remain under the DP. Our political correspondent Shin Ha-young has more.
Amid a bipartisan deadlock over the redistribution of standing committee chairs, the ruling Democratic Party unilaterally filled 4 of 5 vacant posts in a plenary session on Friday. The chair positions at the Budget and Accounts, Legislation and Judiciary, House Steering, Culture, Sports and Tourism, and Strategy and Finance committees were vacant. Of these, 4 positions, excluding the Strategy and Finance Committee, were filled by DP lawmakers, maintaining the party's control over them from the past year. 3-term DP lawmaker Han Byung-do was appointed chair of the Special Committee on Budget and Accounts and will lead the review of the supplementary budget proposal. 4-term DP lawmaker Lee Chun-seok was named chair of the Legislation and Judiciary Committee. The main opposition People Power Party walked out of the session as it had been calling for a rebalancing of the committee's leadership, arguing that the shift in government following the recent snap presidential election justified the change. The PPP insisted it should hold the chairs of the Judiciary and Budget committees to provide checks and balances on the ruling party.
The supplementary budget is an important issue, so the PPP is willing to cooperate to quickly elect a new budget committee chair. For the other committee chairs, we believe more talks are needed to restore cooperation and bring back the National Assembly's tradition of checks and balances.
The Democratic Party, however, has maintained that the current arrangement should remain, citing last year's agreement between the two parties on a 2-year term for committee chairs.
The People Power Party is delaying the Prime Minister's confirmation and budget review over the Legislative and Judiciary Committee chair. Don't they see people are struggling with a sluggish economy? Shouldn't they help the new government get to work?
With the Budget and Accounts Special Committee chair now in place, the review of the supplementary budget proposal is expected to gain momentum. Shin Ha-young, Arirang News.
President Lee Jae-myung reiterated his words of gratitude to the country's patriots for their selfless service during a luncheon on this Friday at Cheong Wa Dae. Our presidential office correspondent Song Yoo-jin covers the occasion.
2 days after the 75th anniversary of the Korean War, President Lee Jae-myung hosted a lunch on Friday to mark National Patriots and Veterans Month. 160 guests, including recipients of National Merit and their families, were invited to Cheong Wa Dae, the site of the former presidential office.
일제 치하의 독립운동, 그리고 6.25 전쟁, 4.19 혁명, 월남전, 5.18 민주화운동, 서해 수호의 역사를 통해서 오늘의 대한민국이 있습니다.
President Lee introduced some of the honorees by name and asked for a round of applause in recognition of their sacrifices. At the heart of his speech was a pledge to better honor and repay their service, which he says has been far too neglected until now.
우리 국가 공동체의 존속 그리고 우리 국가 구성원들의 더 나은 삶과 안전, 생명을 위해서 희생하신 것에 대해서는 우리 국가 공동체 구성원 모두가 특별한 관심과 애정으로 상응하는 보상을 하고 예우해야.
This is something President Lee pledged during his candidacy, promising to review and improve compensation and medical care for those who have helped safeguard the nation as well as their families. The menu included dishes prepared with abalone, crabs, and short ribs. The presidential office says Friday's event was to express gratitude and respect by providing the highest honors to those who gave everything to protect their country. Song Yoo-jin, Arirang News.
For those of you who have yet to make weekend plans, as rain is in the forecast here, how about binge watching the final season of Squid Game, which was just released about an hour ago? Our Choi Seong has some of the highlights.
In Season 2, Song Gi-hoon joined the game again, but failed to foment a rebellion and even lost his best friend. His fate is now decided in season 3.
Ki-hoon changes and makes up his mind. This is what I can do, and decides to take action based on that belief.
The conflicts and stories of the main characters push to the edge between life and death are key points to watch. In particular, many viewers have been looking forward to the showdown between Ki-hoon and the frontman Hwang In-ho, the surprise central figure of season 2.
All the characters' interactions and stories will finally explode in season 3, so I believe it makes up for any disappointments from season 2.
Season 3 centers on the clash of values between Ki-hoon and the frontman, Hwang In-ho, individual survival or collective cooperation. This ideological conflict began to take shape in season 2, and how this conflict ends is a key point to watch.
In season 3, new Korean games that were not featured in previous seasons are introduced in the survival game. Moreover, beyond survival, a key point to watch is how unique Korean emotions and culture in Squid Game make it stand out.
Season 2 also introduced many new games. But in Season 3, what's more important is how the characters' personal stories unfold and what message they ultimately deliver. The key point is how much emotional impact those stories and each characters can create.
The 6-episode season was released all at once on June 27th at 4 p.m. Korean Standard Time. With Season 3, Squid Game has begun its final dance, bringing a 4-year-long journey to an end. Choi Soo-hyung, Arirang News.
And now let's move from the screen to the stage. A talented teenage composer is seeking to blur the boundaries between traditional Korean musical instruments and contemporary musical compositions. Our Yooni has more.
19-year-old classical music composer Hanurij has unveiled his first traditional Korean music piece. He won the Bartók World Competition in Hungary when he was just 18. This young talent has also written a commissioned piece for pianist Lee Myun-chan, the youngest ever winner of the Van Cliburn International Piano Competition at just 18 years old in 2022. Now Lee has entered a completely new territory by composing his first piece for Korean traditional orchestra, a bold step that bridges tradition and modernity and breaks down the walls between Korean and Western music. The opportunity came when conductor Choi Soo-yeol, currently serving as the principal guest conductor of the Seoul Metropolitan Traditional Orchestra, invited Lee to write a piece. Choi describes the Korean Traditional Orchestra as a branch of contemporary music, a special genre that allows us to express the present through ancient instruments. Hanurij's debut in the genre came to life through the Seoul Metropolitan Traditional Orchestra's concert, filling the Sejong Center for the Performing Arts on Thursday night with the richly layered and resonant sounds of kugak, Korea's traditional music. In an interview with representatives from the Sejong Center, Lee described his piece as an attempt to construct an entirely different kind of sentence using the vocabulary of kugak, one that unfolds loosely, hazily, without clear peaks or dramatic climaxes. Hanurij, premiering his work Unselected Ambient Loops 2525, his debut composition for a Korean traditional orchestra, experimentally explores the unique tones and sonic possibilities of traditional instruments. Quoting him, in this piece the loop functions more like a memory, fading, warping, and merging into new contexts yet never entirely vanishing. As pianist Lee Myun-chan puts it, he's one of the most outstanding composers of our time. The future of the music world isn't just bright, it's dynamically unpredictable. 이은희, Arirang News.
This is The World Now, bringing you the latest stories from around the globe. The White House has announced that there is no evidence showing enriched uranium was removed from the sites it targeted in Iran. On Thursday local time, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt stated that U.S. intelligence had monitored the sites in Fordo, Natanz, and Isfahan before Saturday's strikes and found no indication that any enriched uranium had been moved before the attacks. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth echoed those assurances at a Pentagon briefing, saying he was not aware of any intelligence to suggest nuclear material was relocated. President Trump also took to Truth Social on Thursday morning, reaffirming that nothing was taken out of the facility. This stance confronts claims from satellite imagery and some experts suggesting heavy truck activity near the Fordo entrance, possibly indicating a removal of uranium ahead of the attacks. A senior Iranian official told Reuters that a significant portion of Iran's 60% enriched uranium may have been relocated to undisclosed sites in advance. Speaking before the General Assembly during a ceremony marking the 80th anniversary of the signing of the organization's charter, Guterres said global actors are selectively observing the document's rules when it suits and ignoring them when it does not. He described this as a danger to the foundations of international relations, stating the charter is not an a la carte menu and its violation must not be normalized. The Secretary General urged member states to recommit to core principles, including sovereignty, non-aggression, protection of civilians, and the rule of international law. U.S. diplomat McCoy Pitt acknowledged the UN's successes over 8 decades, but underscored its failure to contain current wars and urged a renewed dedication to the Charter as a continuing call to action. Shubhanshu Shukla, a 39-year-old group captain in the Indian Air Force, boarded the International Space Station on Thursday, becoming the first Indian to do so and becoming only the second Indian in space since Rakesh Sharma in 1984. He traveled to the ISS as part of the Axiom 4 mission, operated privately by SpaceX, which lifted off on Wednesday. The mission places Shukla on a 2-week science run, working alongside U.S. astronaut Commander Peggy Whitson and astronauts from Poland and Hungary. Shukla called the view from space beyond expectations. France is introducing a ban on outdoor smoking effective July 1st, which prohibits nicotine use in public spaces frequented by children, including beaches, parks, and school entrances. The move aims to protect youths from secondhand smoke, with violators facing fines of up to $153. The French health minister stated where there are children, tobacco must disappear, underscoring the government's commitment to creating a smoke-free generation. The legislation builds on the 2008 indoor smoking ban and follows pilot bans already adopted by over 1,500 municipalities and numerous beaches. Choi Ji-hee, Arirang News.
It would be nice if the weather was sunny this weekend, but there is rain forecast all over the country. Starting with the central parts of the country tomorrow morning, it will spread further south in the afternoon. Some central areas will continue to have rain until Sunday morning. As for the expected amount of rainfall, up to 40 millimeters of rain will fall in central regions and up to 60 millimeters in the south. The intensity of the rain will not be strong, but it will be accompanied by gusty winds and lightning around the south. Tomorrow morning will start warm with high humidity at 21 to 24 degrees Celsius all over the country. Highs will move up to 28 degrees in Seoul, Chuncheon, and Busan, 31 degrees in Gwangju and Jeju. It will also rain in the Seoul metropolitan area and western parts of Gangwon-do province early next week. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
Right, those are the headlines at this hour here in South Korea. As always, thank you for watching.
country where traditional and modern cultures coexist.
Where you can explore spectacular landscapes and nature.
Savor the delights of traveling at every turn.
Where? Korea, of course.
There are some must-visit places in Korea. Ones that appear in every tour guidebook: Hangang River, Gyeongbokgung Palace from the Joseon Dynasty, and...
Yes, these are essentials, but I want to go somewhere a little different. I don't have to follow the guidebook. For example, filming locations for K-pop music videos or K-dramas and movies.
Traveling is all about taking it slow. A long walk at your own pace, or even zoning out somewhere quiet. Doesn't it sound relaxing?
You travel for the experience, trying something new in a foreign place, de-stressing and making lifetime memories, taking tons of pictures along the way.
70% of the Korean territory is mountainous. Naturally, hiking is a very popular pastime in Korea. Not your kind of activity? Trust me, the view will make the effort worth it. Just catch your breath by the cold stream in the valley.
Korea is surrounded by the sea on three sides. From the beach, you can enjoy a wide open view as well as various water activities. But the riverside is great too. There's plenty to see and do.
If you're in Korea, you can't miss the night view full of dazzling lights.
Yes, even the same place can have a totally different vibe at night.
Want to make unforgettable memories?
How about traveling to all corners of Korea? Join us next time to explore more about Korean culture. Arirang TV is conducting an overseas TV viewer survey to provide you with a better global broadcast service. Share your valuable feedback on the Arirang TV website www.arirang.com or mobile application. Survey participants will be selected at random to receive special gifts. 2025 Arirang Overseas TV Viewer Survey. We look forward to hearing from you.
Your gateway to Korea, Simply K-pop. Hello, I'm your Simply K-pop MC Taewi of AB6. Let's go!
And I'm your special MC Jelly of Unit.
Yay, princess! And this week's Simply K-pop,
Gateway to Korea.
Don't miss out.
An intriguing opinion piece published by an American daily claims there's a link between K-dramas and Korea's low birth rate, which for its part has been on a steady rise in recent months. With more on Press Perspective today. Hello, welcome to to Press Perspective, that is, for this Friday, June 27th, here in Seoul. I'm Min Sun-hee. It's that time of the week yet again, during which we touch upon a host of social stories that made international headlines. For more on this, I have Anna Semyatiki. I'm sorry, Anna, you're going to have to help me pronounce your surname again.
Anna Semyatiki.
Right. Anna Semyatiki, you are a correspondent for French weekly La Tribune Dimanche.
Yes,
Welcome.
exactly.
It's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me here today.
And it's a pleasure to meet you as well. I also have writer Colin Marshall with the pundit's take on today's topic. As always, Colin, welcome back.
Glad to be back again.
Colin, let's start with you. Let's begin with your thoughts on the rising number of newborns as well as marriages here in South Korea. Do you believe we're witnessing a tangible shift in trend, or is this a temporary phenomenon, do you think?
Well, I think we ought like to think it is a permanent thing, at least because it would keep us from having to talk more about dropping birth rate. When in fact, it's been rising. It's a low birth rate still, but the statistic that's being made much of right now is that compared to last year, April of this year saw an 8.7% rise in the birth rate, I believe it was. And so this is the largest jump of that kind in 34 years, I believe it was. So this is something, I suppose, to celebrate. It's not something to worry about in and of itself. The overall rate is, of course, still below replacement. So Korea is not exactly out of the woods, but this has been going on. The rate has been rising gradually, though it may be, and in small steps, though it may be, for the past 10 months or so, the better part of a year. And so it seems like the makings of a longer-term trend. Of course, it could always fall off. It's really hard to say, of course. People will make all kinds of predictions, and people will also speculate a lot about the reasons behind this increase after such a long decrease. And one of them is a fairly simple and straightforward explanation that proportionally there are coming to be more women in their early 30s among the Korean population than there were before. There's some kind of a bump demographically there. And as more women come into their early 30s than were in their early 30s recently, you have more women with an interest in having families in that time of life. And so that's one factor, I'm sure. There are others, of course. There's lots of government efforts to, as we all know, to encourage, to incentivize having babies, starting families. But the marriage rate, as you say, has also seen an increase. So you could say that there is a slight sort of social reorientation towards marriage and children where there hadn't been for at least a few decades, or in the same way. So it's, of course, a thing. It's something people welcome. It's a phenomenon people welcome, but it's a little early to judge what it's going to look like in the long term. And that's the way we have to look at it, because it wasn't so long ago Korea was afraid of overpopulation, that the schools would explode from too many kids and all this. There was really a lot of government material out there advocating for having less kids, telling the Korean public, stop it too if you can. Now it's the other way around. So we need to take a long view to assess this more, I think, soberly, shall we say.
Which is what quite a number of pundits have been saying.
Indeed.
And now, Anna Semyatiki, do excuse my inability to pronounce your name at the start of the program. Anna, Korea has the world's lowest birth rate. As of findings last year, we stand at 0.75. What have been some of your first-hand observations here in South Korea?
Well, I would say that as a French correspondent who just arrived about 2 months ago here, Korea's low birth rate is something you don't just read about. For me, it's something you can feel in everyday life. For example, in Seoul, where I live and actually has the lowest birth rate in the entire country, I can really feel it. I mean that in cafes and restaurants, I've noticed a lot of couples, single people, and even group of friends, but rarely young families. Also, in my neighborhood, there are very few children. For example, there is this playgrounds where that's always empty. And actually, I think that in Seoul, I've seen more people pushing strollers for dogs than for babies too. So, and yes, there is another thing I've noticed too, is that on Seoul subway, there are these seats reserved for pregnant women, and they are rarely taken. And also, I've noticed that sometimes they are taken by elderly people because during rush hours, there are not enough seats dedicated to them. So, yeah.
Right. It's an unfortunate scene.
I think, yes, maybe Korea's demographic crisis yes, isn't just a statistic. You can feel it all around you.
Right. Colin, in the meantime, though, the New York Times, it recently carried an opinion piece, quite an intriguing one, claiming that there was a link between K-dramas and Korea's low birth rate. Could you tell us a bit about this particular opinion piece, and to what extent do you agree with it?
Claiming or implying a link in any case, but this is the kind of piece, it's good timing to write it now, because if the birth rate keeps rising, at some point it won't be so viable to pitch to editors. And as any of us who write essays in public know, if you know about something in particular and you can attach it to a current trend, you've got yourself a pitch. You can write that essay. And this is a piece by Yoon Hong, who's pretty well known in the West among readers about Korea in English. She had a book called The Birth of Korean Cool in 2014, I think it was, and just put out a new edition revised with chapters about BTS and Squid Game and Parasite and all that. And so she's looked to as kind of an authority on Korean popular culture and the sort of the soft power of Korea that it has achieved through its pop culture. And so this is a sort of a natural piece for her to write, and she covers mainly, or she uses as examples, two series. One of them, Sky Castle, which is a Korean drama set among the sort of elite of Gangnam. And it's somewhat satirical, but also sort of serious. One of these distinctive Korean genres. I mean, she emphasizes that it's not that exaggerated, what you see in Sky Castle, the sort of forms of competition or what parents pay for to try to keep their kids in the upper class, that whole thing. But it has a satirical element to it, of course. And so viewers, to Yoon Hong's mind, viewers watching that, they're going to think, ooh, that's the good outcome. If things go well, I'm going to still have to be in the world of Sky Castle, where it's just all about paying for every possible thing to ensure my kids are passed through the filters that sort of stand for success in Korea. That doesn't sound so good. And then the other one is called, in English, I think it's Birth Care Center, as odd as that name sounds. That's the translation of Sanhujoriwon, which is the name of the facilities that many pregnant women in Korea stay after they give birth for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month, in order to, as Yoon Hong puts it, recover their bodies, to get back to how they were, to sort of get to their pre-pregnancy state again. That is one purpose of them, true. They also provide sort of education about child rearing, that kind of thing, for husbands as well. I myself will be visiting one soon. My wife's going to give birth in August, and we've got the Joriwon booked. And so we watched this other series, Birth Care Center, ourselves, and it's pretty entertaining. But it's also a comedy in many ways. It's, drama/comedy, that Korean mix where it's serious about its emotions, but also it heavily satirizes the kind of competition the moms are in with each other subtly, and the way that the sort of ajumma who run the place kind of sternly feel like they have to control their clients, and all kinds of social dynamics that play out in that kind of setting. That series uses it for comedy and for drama, for all kinds of different emotions. And yes, I guess you could watch these shows and say, I don't want to have any of this, but I suspect Korean dramas are not a primary cause of the low birth rate, but I suspect what she's getting at more is that it reflects the characteristics of Korean society that people cite when they're asked, why don't you want to have babies? They'll point to, I don't like the competition, I don't like the education culture, I don't like the attitudes moms have toward each other, I don't like all the expectations, what I have to spend money on. These dramas use those aspects of society for their stories. And as Yoon Hong points out, most drama writers are women. So they're writing from experience, or they're writing from their feelings about, maybe they don't have kids. Maybe they think, oh, I don't want to do this. Let's make a story about it, But I think it is, like all entertainment, a reflection of its culture, but not to be taken too seriously as a driver of trends. But as a reflection of attitudes, yes, I think it's very informative.
Right. Another article, Anna, by the Agence France-Presse, though, it sheds light on the link between K-dramas and mental health. Could you tell us a bit more about that particular coverage and your thoughts as well?
Yes, well, yes, according to this article made by AFP, there is this Korean-American teacher, therapist, who say that K-drama can help with mental health. And because K-drama is dealing with issues such as grief, family pressure, and this kind of topics, it can help people to process with their own emotions. There is this example of an American school teacher. She discovered K-drama during a very difficult time, and it helped her to start grieving, whether she hadn't been able to do so before. Yes, so also a Seoul psychiatrist say that K-dramas could be a form of modern art therapy. So according to my thoughts, I would say that I do believe that any kind of art can be a form of therapy, whether it's music, K-dramas, or even like movies, a TV show. In that sense, K-drama can provide emotional support to people. But I also think that we shouldn't forget the other side, which is that these kind of TV shows can become easily addictive, and like instead helping people to reconnect with the real world, it could make them more like it could provoke more isolation and yes, disconnect from the real world. It doesn't help them necessarily to connect with each other too. But I think that said, many international viewers who grown up with American TV shows, for example, watching K-dramas can help them to discover new culture, making them travel, and yeah, so I think we have to consider the pros and cons of K-dramas.
Right, for sure. Colin, quite a number of foreign media outlets in recent years have referred to South Korea as a cultural powerhouse. Do you suppose this title is quite fitting, or does South Korea still have more to do?
Well, it's one of those cliches. It's become a cliche now. 20 years ago, if you said South Korea was a cultural powerhouse, people wouldn't have believed you. Now, it's so common to hear. It's like, oh, yeah, of course it is, right? That's why it's a cliche, because people accept it. They think, oh, it's true. South Korea, its culture is everywhere. It's across Asia. It's in the West as well. And I do hear, I participate in certain conferences about this from time to time, and people will argue over whether, oh, South Korean culture has more, there's more potential in the world, there's more ground to cover, we can find bigger and bigger audiences, or others say, no, it's over. So you have these diametrically opposed opinions. For myself, I think there probably is a wider audience to be found. There are certain countries that are much more into K-dramas, K-pop, Korean food, what have you, than others. Sometimes that's shaped by the proximity to Korea, and sometimes it just some countries, certain European countries, for example, have a better cultural fit or a more obvious cultural fit with Korea so far, but others could come on board as well. Now, where the limits are of that, I'm not exactly sure, but this is something that we mentioned Yooni Hong. She writes about this. You know, her book was The Birth of Korean Cool. She's always on that beat in the Western media of like, what areas has Korean culture, Korean pop culture got into next? Where is it being adopted or picked up? Where are there fans that we didn't sort of realize there would be fans before? Nobody thought there would be fans before. So it's hard to, you'd really have to push hard for the argument that it was over, that sort of the Hallyu, the Korean wave, has nowhere else to go. But you could say that, you know, maybe the existing forms are not played out, but there are other forms to explore. You know, sometimes you hear people advocate for more traditional Korean culture. How could that be propagated in the rest of the world more effectively? Or are there other forms of pop culture that Koreans enjoy that haven't really successfully, or nobody's thought of putting them out to the West or other parts of the world yet? And then there are parts of the world where it's sort of, in Africa and in the Middle East, there are more and more fans of Korean dramas and Korean culture, Korean media. So those are huge markets. And I think you have to be a bit creative, but there still is a lot that's possible. I mean, I think oftentimes, you know, in recent years, there were these dramas that actually brought back, brought back the idea of the Korean Empire. They envisioned a Korea where the empire, which was the late 19th century, early 20th, before the colonial period, still existed. That had the setting was the imagined Korean Empire, but now, as if there was continuity. And those were sort of semi-interesting, but I often think of Korean pop culture, like Hallyu, as a kind of Korean cultural empire. It's, in a way, that itself is the continuation. Not in a bad way. It's like an empire that people willingly sign up to enjoy, if that's not too much of a contradiction in terms. But it has an imperial spread, I would say. That's the form you see.
Another component of the empire that Colin speaks about, the Korean wave, is of course the food. Now there is much speculation, Anna, about which next Korean or K-food, if you will cause or fuel the next global craze. What are your thoughts regarding this? You've only been here for about 2 months. Have you had an opportunity to taste a lot of Korean food?
Yeah, actually, I tasted a lot of Korean food, and I think that I won't be able to I don't know what will be the next Korean global craze, like K-food, but what I can share is my experience as a French journalist in France, because I've seen how Korean food has become popular in recent years in France. For example, kimchi, tteokbokki, Korean barbecue, yes, a lot of dishes like that are quite well known in France, and many Korean restaurants popped up in recent recent years in Paris too. But even like 5 years ago, my sister was already like cooking kimbap at home. So, and I think it has a lot to do with K-drama and K-pop, which highly contributed to introduce Western people to K-food. And I think that one thing I've noticed in Paris is that French people are really fond of cheesy versions of Korean food, like ramyeon and tteokbokki with cheese. Like for example, a friend of mine went to this Korean restaurant chain in Paris, which specializes in this concept, which is like Korean cheesy comfort food. So I do believe, like, as far as I've been here in Korea, I've tasted takgalbi, and I think that this kind of food has a big, like, potential, global potential, and especially in France, because we have this this culture of gathering and sharing meals together, like spending hours to talk about our lives together, whether with friends or family. So I do think that takgalbi, which is just cooked in front of you and you share a lot of things with friends, could be could fit really well with this French dining culture.
Right. And speaking about the French media, Anna, it recently one covered South Korea's plan to introduce AI-based evaluation methods across the education system. What has been the response to that coverage? And do tell us a bit about it as well.
Yes. Well, recently, French media, they reported that South Korean authorities are considering handing over the entire task of grading paper students to AI. And this idea comes as the country's crucial final high school exam, the Suneung, might soon include more open-ended questions and also like kind of essays, which will replace part of the multiple choice questions. So from a French perspective, it is quite surprising because, you know, in France we have the final exam, which is called the baccalaureate, and it includes mostly essays and open-ended questions. So I would think that in France we would dedicate I think it would be the opposite, like multiple choice questions will be handing over to AI, rather than essay would be dedicated to human graders. And there is another thing I would like to talk about when it comes to AI in education in South Korea. There is my French colleague, Celio Fioretti, who you know well because, like, as the French correspondent for La Croix. Recently, he went to a 4th grade classroom in Daegu back in April, and he visited this. And so in this classroom, there are individual tablets for students. So they only focus on these tablets and they don't talk to each other anymore, even with the teacher. So and it was part of the program from the former government in Seoul, but now it has been questioning by the current government led by Lee Jae-myung. So the young students, they just put their headphones on and they don't discuss with each other anymore. So I think that this can be problematic at a young age where brains are still under development, especially through social interactions, and they are not yet mature to face addiction too. So I think that when it comes to AI in education, we should be really careful regarding children's mental health issues.
Right, for sure, of course. I think South Korea itself is actually exploring the many diverse options of including AI within the classroom arena, of course. Colin, there also has been a bit of media coverage about college students being quite upset about professors resorting to ChatGPT for their lectures. Could you walk us through the concerns raised within the academic arena amid the advances in AI?
Yes, as you say, these are professors using it. These are students being angry about professors using it, not the other way around, which is what you usually see, or what we have been hearing about. You know, the concerns have all revolved around, oh, students are going to cheat, students are going to get AI to write their papers for them, students are going to do this and that and whatever with AI that we don't want to allow. Fair enough, and it certainly seems to be happening at quite a large scale as well. But this recent New York Times piece was about, yes, professors using AI to generate slides for class, for use in lectures, or worse, to generate responses, evaluations to student papers. And it's one thing to use AI, but they were kind of sloppy about it. They left in certain lines that revealed that they were talking to ChatGPT or whatever. I'll make it a little more positive. They just leave that part in. So, you know, that's pretty sloppy. And the excuse, or not excuse, but one explanation professors could give you is that, I mean, they'll say this: yes, we use it. It's a helpful tool. We have a big workload, but we always sort of look over the results, and we have to use our expertise to evaluate what the output is. Well, that shows you they're not evaluating very closely if they're leaving in the prompt they typed in to get the result. But this is inevitable. It was inevitable with students, and it will be with professors or any other professional who can use AI to cut corners. They will. So rather than railing against it, I mean, the question is, how can this environment adapt to that? And AI, as we refer to it with the sort of ChatGPTs of the world, is a pretty new technology. It came out in 2022, I think, publicly. And so that's not enough time for institutions to adapt themselves to it, or even for social practices. I mean, it's still a very addictive technology, as most technologies are when they just come out. And so I think it'll be a long while before we see universities, I mean, if they do adapt. I mean, this is a question of if not when. They have many other concerns, the university. I mean, the crisis of purpose of higher education has been going on for a long time in the US, and here as well, and in Korea. Talk to anyone who teaches here, and they'll tell you the culture of cheating is much stronger here, in the sense that it's more accepted, that not accepted, but more expected. It's more expected students will cheat. And we've seen political figures, for example, whose theses have been revealed as plagiarized. So we're dealing with a world here in Korea where people, to an extent, accept this goes on. And people might get in trouble occasionally, but they are more realistic about the fact that, yes, if this works, people are going to use it. So maybe Korea could be well equipped to actually metabolize AI in a way that other countries can't, or maybe that's wishful thinking. I'm not sure. It's one of the two.
Well, it's definitely a topic that we can talk about some more in another session. I'm afraid that's all the time we have. Colin, thank you so much for your time and your thoughts today.
Thank you.
And Anna Simiatekiv, the correspondent for French weekly La Tribune Dimanche, thank you so much for your time and your thoughts today.
Thank you so much.
Right, well, on that note, we say goodbye. Thank you for watching. Have a good weekend.
Building a sustainable tomorrow. Connect, innovate, and prosper. Connecting goods to goods, region to region, people to people, generation to generation. Facilitating innovation for all, closing the digital divide. Building an inclusive technology ecosystem, promoting digital innovation by deepening dialogues on AI. Achieving shared prosperity, addressing global challenges. Energy transition, climate change, population decline, and pandemic responses. APEC-related events continuing in Seoul, the capital of the Republic of Korea, where diverse cultures blend.